What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday night. And if it's Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central Time, you know what it is. It's time for the season finale of the College Summer Super Series. Braden, what conference are we talking about today?
None other than the SEC. Doesn't get better than this.
Dude, it seriously doesn't. Brent, good conference, great conference. What are we thinking?
You know, I'm kind of disappointed it's not the MAC, but here we are. SEC, that's a good consolation prize, I guess.
Close second, right? Close second.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. We talked about the Pac-2, talked about the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, and now we're here at the Southeastern Conference. I'm excited. I know Braden is. I mean, look at that smile.
Can we even call it the Southeastern Conference anymore, Joe? Is the question.
Well, what does that pertain to? I'm interested by what you mean.
Two teams may or may not have gotten added this year.
They added Kent State?
Close.
No, close. So they added Texas, and then they must have added the University of Oklahoma because that's what all the hype's been about since July 1st over here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Wow. That's interesting. We're definitely going to dive way deep into this, guys. I mean, I'm super pumped. We're about to introduce the SEC, up to 14 teams now. Commissioner Greg Sankey is super pumped to be welcoming Oklahoma. He might be pumped to invite Texas. I'll try and be as unbiased as possible, but Boomer Sooner here forever. And if you're a first-year college football fan, just look up the score of the Red River Rivalry last year. That's all you need to know. And with that, we can go ahead and kick it away, unless Braden and Brent, you got something to say before we go down to Tuscaloosa.
I was just going to say, piggybacking off what you said, this would be a good year. If you were a first-year fan, this would be a good year to get into college football, I think. With all the shakeups in the conferences, with the 12-team playoff, I feel like this would be a really good year to, pick a favorite team and finally devote yourself to college football.
I guess the real question is, Brent, what are we going to see next year? I mean, we saw the chaos of flipping from 23 to 2024. Who's going to make that next big change? Obviously, the SEC seems like it's going to be pretty intact for at least the next 2-4 years or so. But there are teams that are going to make a move. Braden, what do you think about what's going to happen with the Pac-12? And then, Brent, I'll kick it over to you and think about what you think about maybe some ACC teams, and then we'll kick it over to Alabama.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going to go on with the Pac-2. I've heard talk of moving Mountain West teams over and making a new Pac-12. I've heard just throwing Oregon State and Wazoo into the Big 12, or maybe even dropping them down into a Group of 4 program like the Mountain West. There's a lot of different ways they could go, but it obviously is not sustainable just for them to stay the Pac-2 for very long. So we'll see where that develops.
Yeah, as far as the ACC goes, the three biggest teams I have my eyes on are Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, as I feel like those are the three powerhouses of the ACC, at least of late. So if there was any shakeups there, I feel like that's where it would come.
I love it. I'm super excited to see what happens. I think the ACC is going to shake up. Braden and I completely agree about you talking about the Mountain West, especially with that being a bigger conference pad. So we'll see if teams like Colorado and Arizona State stay forever in the Big 10 where they're sitting at right now. The Big 12 where they're sitting at right now. And without further ado, I mean, they're coming to Norman this year, so I thought I'd talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide. They've had a lot change for them. But, hey, it's the SEC. We opened the Jefferson's bottle. We're ready to rock and roll. Let's talk about Tuscaloosa. So, obviously, an interesting season last year at 12-2, an undefeated, spotless SEC conference play in the final year of Nick Saban, beating Georgia in the SEC championship to give them the number 4 seed bid. Or actually, they might have been 3. No, they were 4, weren't they?
4, yeah.
They were 4. Okay. Anyways, like I was saying, a 2-loss Alabama team after, unfortunately, tough loss to that team. Why am I blanking on who they lost to? Guys, come on. It was Michigan. Anyways, that was one of them. That was one of the most fantastic games that we had seen. Obviously, losing 20-27 to JJ McCarthy's led team, but the Alabama Crimson Tide, a really weird shakeup here. Losing Caleb Downs is going to be huge for this organization. Losing Nick Saban is going to be huge for this organization. So, what does that mean for a new era of football in Tuscaloosa? So, let's go ahead and kick it off with Kalen DeBoer. Brought Washington to the national championship game last season, his first year in Alabama history. Obviously, the guy you're thinking is Jalen Milroe. He's the reason they were even in the semifinals last year, the only reason they were at the Rose Bowl, because he threw a Hail Mary touchdown against Auburn. Huge play where they say that the game's not over till it's over, because Alabama, even with the win against Georgia, would not have advanced to the college football playoff with 2 losses. That's just a fact. He's going to play a huge role. Jalen Milroe needs some help from his offensive line. He's quick too. He's a dual threat quarterback. He's an NFL prospect. Let's just get that out of the way. Their key recruit, it's kind of easy to do that with Alabama. It was the number 4 ranked nationally player in the world. His name's Ryan Williams. He's a freshman wide receiver. Now that wide receiver room is deep. They did lose a couple players to the draft last season. They lost a couple players to the transfer portal. So you could see this guy getting some snaps as early as year 1. And that's not too typical for a freshman wide receiver, especially for a program of this value. This might be the first time in history that Alabama's over-under is set at something that is not double digits. It's set at 9.5. That's crazy. Their floor for me is 8 wins. Their ceiling's going to be 11. My fun fact for you guys is obviously Nick Saban leaving the program. It makes you think back on history. Alabama's last head coach that was not named Nick Saban was Mike Shula. You might recognize the last name Shula from Don Shula. He went 10-23 from 2003 to 2006 and then was fired before the bowl game.
Nice.
And then they picked this guy up named Nick Saban. He's been the guy since we were 5 years old. Another note about this team, and I think it's a little unique because I know Alabama typically has a lot of freshmen, sophomores that Nick Saban just threw in from the get-go so he could build his team back up. 18 projected upperclassmen starters for this team. That is a ton, unlike any other Crimson Tide team. My prediction is they're going to go 10-2. Those 2 losses coming in conference play. I think they're going to get that rubber match against Georgia. Georgia is coming into Tuscaloosa. I think this Georgia team's more well-rounded. I'll speak about it when I talk about the Bulldogs later. And I'm going to be honest, no bias intended. I think on November 23rd, this Alabama team is going to come into Norman and lose.
I can see it. Be a tough game for sure.
Oh, yeah. With that being said, let's talk some Razorbacks.
Yeah. I got Arkansas, boys. Feel like Arkansas hasn't had a good season since 2021 when they went 9-4. The 2022 run was wildly inconsistent, and last season can obviously be thrown in the trash as they went 4-8. Arkansas needs to figure it out in a way to be better this season, or it could be fifth-year head coach Sam Pittman on the hot seat. To get back to glory, the Razorbacks need to lean on their best players again, and there's no one better to lead this team than Landon Jackson, a senior defensive end. The All-American had 44 tackles, 6.5 sacks, and a pass deflection in his second year of SEC play. But their top transfer, who is going to be key for this team, is quarterback Talon Green from Boise State. The junior got pretty hot at the end of last year, throwing for over 225 yards and pounding the rock in each of his last 2 games. Combine that with running back Jaquindon Jackson, and Arkansas might be able to get back to their bread and butter, which is running the ball. The 6'2", 235-pound back started at Texas before becoming a key part of the rotation at Utah, where he was averaging 5.5 yards per carry. Hopefully, Arkansas can get back to leaning on the run game, and maybe that will lead to some more success. Another guy I'm extremely interested in this season is Monty Harrison. In 2014, Harrison was drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers. But obviously, nothing of note came out of his baseball tenure, as his career MLB stats are a 176 batting average, 2 career home runs, and 6 RBIs. The reason this guy can play in college is because he didn't use any of his eligibility as a football player when he was recruited to Nebraska out of high school. He instead opted to play in the MLB, hence why he was drafted in 2014. And with a little bit of a redemption arc, nearly 10 years later, and at 29 years old, he decided to commit to the University of Arkansas as a walk-on wide receiver. Pretty crazy stuff.
Unbelievable.
It's not fair.
Even to add to it even more, this guy was apparently working with the starters in camp. So he could get some real playing time with this team and be a contributor. So we'll see what happens. But I really wanted to predict this team to go bowling again. But after looking at the schedule, they will still play some of the SEC powerhouses. And I can honestly only give them 5 wins this year.
Brent, you may have mentioned it about the 29-year-old freshman, but it's Monte Harrison, right?
Yep.
You may have already said this, but wasn't he a part of the Christian Yelich trade?
I did not see that.
So let me see if I can find it. Hold on. While I'm looking that up, Braden, I meant to tell you this about the Crimson Tide. They went 12-2 last year. Here at the Sports Outlet Show, we're accountable. All right. You heard your hot take from Brent last week. Gave him the glory about Washington. Well, is there glory, or are we about to hit the flames to the fire? Braden, tell me who did Alabama last year and what was predicted.
Joe, actually, you had Alabama last year, and you did pretty well. You had them going 10-2, so 2 losses is correct. 2 regular season losses, not quite. They had 1 loss in the regular season, and then they lost in the playoffs. You had your biggest game listed for them was week 2 versus Texas, and what a game that was. So you were right there. Texas ended up taking that game. That was their 1 loss in the regular season, a great, great game. So you did pretty well. You did pretty well for them.
I legitimately think that I said that they were going to lose to Texas too. We might have to pull that clip.
Yeah, if I recall, I think you did.
I think I might have.
For Arkansas, I had them last year. I gave them a little too much credit. I had them going 6-6, going bowling. That didn't happen. So little too much hype for them after the inconsistent season last year.
Yeah. I'd say getting right on the money or 1 game, you did crazy. 2, you did good. Anything over 4, we might have to kick you off the show. So.
Like WVU.
Yeah. That was rough. Let's head over there to Auburn.
Yeah. So Auburn, I'm going to take y'all on a little bit of flashback here. The date is November 25th, 2023. The Tigers are just coming off an ugly loss against New Mexico State to fall to 6-5. But that doesn't matter now because Auburn is beating Alabama 24-20. It's 4th and goal from the 31-yard line, and we're 1 play away from smashing Alabama's playoffs hopes. Joe already spoiled how this one ends. Jalen Milroe heaves up a bomb to the back left quarter of the end zone for a 31-yard touchdown on 4th down. Auburn would go on to lose their bowl game and end the season 6-7. So a very disappointing end to what could have been an amazing game, a season-defining game for Auburn. That's going to lead to Hugh Freeze entering his 2nd season with a bad taste in his mouth. But he has a shiny new offense to try and project this team past their projected win total of 7.5. Last year, the offense was what it was. Senior running back Hunter Jarquez returns after running for just over 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. Quarterback and 2nd leading rusher Peyton Thorne returns after a pretty mess season. He had just under 1,800 passing yards, 16 touchdowns with 10 interceptions, and 515 rushing yards. So not amazing. This offense should be more interesting this year, though, as they bring in a brand new group of exciting receivers, 2 transfers in Keandre Lambert-Smith from Penn State and Robert Lewis from Georgia State. They're slated to start alongside the number 2 wide receiver in this upcoming freshman class, 5-star Cam Coleman. Defensively, this team was pretty solid last year, only allowing 22 points per game, and they should remain pretty good this year. Their best player, senior linebacker Eugene Asante, returns, and they add transfer Isaiah Rakes from USC. Their schedule this year includes 7 games that should be surefire wins. The remaining 5 games are all in-conference opponents that are ranked in the preseason poll. After starting at what should be 4-0, the Tigers will take on number 16 Oklahoma at home, and they will travel to Athens to take on Georgia next. Fortunately, after that, they get a bye, but then they go to Missouri to take on number 11, and then they get a 3-week break before taking on number 20 Texas A&M and traveling to take on number 5 Alabama to end the season. I think Auburn will be able to win at least one of those ranked matchups in order to lock in a solid 8-4 record. And I had them, or Joe, you had them last year, and you predicted them to go 6-6, which they did. So good stuff.
That's
Hey,
crazy.
man, we know our SEC football here in Norman. We don't need to be a part of it.
Yeah, well done. Well done.
So is Auburn going to get a little bit of redemption on Alabama this year?
I don't know about that game, but they're going to win one of those ranked games. That's a lot of tough ones. It is in Alabama this year, or it is in Tuscaloosa. So
Tuscaloosa.
I'll be rooting for the upset.
Oh yeah, always.
Got to.
No repeat. No repeat.
No.
I'm pretty sure I had the Gators last year, so I would like to not discuss how badly I predicted them.
Yeah. As you mentioned, Joe, Florida lately they don't seem to have the same flair and interest from recruits like Texas, Michigan, heck, even USC lately. I'm not sure if it's because of that some of that Steve Spurrier or Urban Meyer magic of the past is wearing off, but the Gators need to figure things out to erase their 5-7 record from last year. They're head coached by Billy Napier, who has been attempting to pull this program out of a gaping hole the past 2 years, but no dice this far. He's 11-14 with the team.
Ooh.
To emerge, they're going to need to lean on their leader, quarterback Graham Mertz. He might not have been dynamic last year, but the former star quarterback recruit for Wisconsin hit 73% of his passes for 2,900 yards and 20 touchdowns. He doesn't add anything with his legs, but he can spread the ball around. I do worry slightly, though, as his top weapon, Ricky Pearsall, joins the 49ers. So they'll have to lean on second leading receiver Eugene Wilson, who is back after catching 61 balls and 6 scores last year. Also to help, they brought in Elijah Badger, a senior wide receiver from Arizona State. He made 135 catches for close to 1,600 yards and 10 scores over the past 2 seasons. But the reason this team collapsed last season is because of the run defense. When the schedule got tougher late in the year, they saw teams annihilate them on the ground. And because of it, they ranked 79th in the country in that category. They have to be better on that side of the ball. Unfortunately for Florida, they have one of the most brutal Novembers I have ever seen. It starts with number 1 ranked Georgia. They have number 4 Texas, number 13 LSU, number 6 Ole Miss, and ends with number 10 Florida State. Back to back to back to back to back.
Brutal.
Those are 5 straight losses to close the season. There's no getting around it. They lose all of those games easily, in my eyes. And to make matters worse, there is a little bit more riding on this season. The Gators haven't had 3 straight losing seasons since the 1930s. But history will repeat itself this year. I predict the Gators to go 3-9.
Oh, yikes.
And Joe mentioned before the podcast started, Florida has the hardest schedule in college football this year.
No doubt. Absolutely. And Joe, you did have them last year. We said no more than 4. You had them at 8-4, which is 3. So you're good. You're not getting kicked off the podcast.
I
Can't
don't
blame
know what we would do.
Can't blame you for being optimistic, but it just wasn't their season.
Hey, man, Graham Mertz hurts.
Yeah.
When are they going to get Tebow back? Come on.
Come on. That's all they need.
I don't know. We're letting 29-year-olds in the league.
Might as well bring him back.
Might as well suit up. Just switch his first letter of his first and last name.
Oh, yeah, that works.
Tim Tebow. Well, I guess we can talk about go Dogs. Go Dogs. Oh, give me Alabama. No, I'm just kidding. My little Pat McAfee moment. Thanks for listening, guys. 13-1. And is that one an eyesore or what? The Georgia Bulldogs. You know, people said Florida State, they were the team that got kicked out, right? No. The Georgia Bulldogs were the team that got snubbed from the college football playoff. Last year was such a dynamic and crazy year that the 4 seed was decided by the SEC championship. Bama versus Georgia. And everybody went, where's Florida State? Well, Florida State lost in the Orange Bowl by 60 points to the Bulldogs. So let's put Florida State over there for a minute. And let's talk about that. Kirby Smart in the locker room before this game was probably angrier than a PTO mom whose kid is not getting playing time. That simple. The Georgia Bulldogs are coming in ranked number 1 in the nation. Could they have beaten Michigan? Likely so. Could they have beaten Washington? Unfortunately, probably yes. Could they have defeated Alabama? If you give it a coin flip game again, maybe. On a neutral stage again, maybe. I'm forgetting the 4th team. Could they have beaten Texas? Honestly, Texas could have been one of their more tougher competitions, but yes. You can say yes in any of those scenarios. This team is coming with an absolute fire. This team is ready to go. Behind their 9th season of Kirby Smart, who has only lost 16 games in his tenure with the Bulldogs so far, Carson Beck is the quarterback name once again. Now, Heisman candidate being on this team is just already being said. I mean, you throw a quarterback in Georgia, you throw one on Alabama. They're on the watch list before the season starts. But this team goes out and they get a top 5, top 10 running back in junior Trevor Etienne. Yes, related to Jaguars running back Travis Etienne. They got a Gator to come up to Athens. This team got scarier and they lost Brock Bowers. That's as simple as I can say. Now, their over-under set at 10.5. I'm not sure if those over-unders are just based off the regular season. I'd have to assume they are based off of that because there's no way this team's not winning their bowl game there's no way this Georgia Bulldogs team is not making the college football playoff with 12 teams. Their ceiling is set at 12. Their floor is set at 8, which is pretty low. You guys may have seen all the memes, but it is a note of fact that Georgia has the lowest graduation rate in college football at 41%.
Because all their players get drafted.
So hold on. A part of that statistic does not include transfers or those that left for the draft early.
Oh, okay.
I was hoping someone would say that.
So somebody that does count is Stetson Bennett, who still did not graduate after playing that many years.
That guy doesn't have his doctorate.
He doesn't have a degree.
Oh, boy.
He was living the college dream.
Wow. Quite literally.
He also
anyways, life passes you by like a quick car.
Yeah, he also qualifies for that statistic. Stetson Bennett does. Last year, we had a guest star take on Georgia. Shout out to Ahmad because he absolutely nailed it. Had them going 12-1. perfect. Didn't include the bowl game. Okay, Ahmad, on it. Nothing else to say.
I'm gonna text him right now and let him know he might have to come back on the show.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure he'd love to.
Beautifully done.
Beautifully done by Ahmad Davis, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, my little note fact as well is since November 2020, the Bulldogs are 46-2, with both their losses coming to Alabama in the SEC championship in 2021 and 2023. Kirby Smart has lost 2 games in 4 years and has 2 national titles to show for it. Got snubbed 1 year, and they were both to a man that is now retired. Oh, boy. With that being said, I have the Georgia Bulldogs going 11-1. I have them dropping a game. Your first question is, well, which one's it going to be? You said that Alabama was going to win. Guys, it's going to be in Austin, and it's going to be against Texas. DKR will show up that day. It will be midseason form Quinn Ewers. I think that Texas has enough the week after they take on Oklahoma at the Red River. Talk about a tune-up game. Imagine saying the Red River Rivalry is a tune-up game for Georgia. It's going to be a tough back-to-back week, but I think this Georgia team, they have to go to Tuscaloosa, they have to go to Austin, and they have to go to Oxford. One of those 3, I just have a feeling this team might lose. This team's making the college football playoff and they're winning the SEC, with that being said. But
probably the championship. I mean, I just don't – looking at the talent on the roster, like, I just don't see another team beating them. Like, I feel like this year, even more than, like, previous years, I just feel like this team is a lot better than the rest, in my eyes.
I completely agree.
Let's kick it over. I have a newfound hatred for this school. Just talk about them.
Yeah, Kentucky. The key for Kentucky this season is to not just beat up on the bad teams, but beat some good teams too. The Wildcats had another impressive season of 7-6, but 6 of those 7 wins came against teams that had a losing record. If you want to belong in the SEC, you have to beat some teams you shouldn't. They're head coached by Mark Stoops, who is entering his 12th season with the team and has a record of 63-65 during that time frame. Their best player is junior defensive tackle Dion Walker, who is one of the best in the nation at the position. As an almost slam dunk first-round draft pick, the quick 6'6", 348-pounder is the star of the defense, as last year he compiled 51 tackles, 5.5 sacks, and 2 pass deflections. But to add to Walker, Kentucky brought in one of the many great Georgia recruits over the last few years, senior linebacker Jamin Dumas Johnson. He played right away as a freshman, came up with 70 tackles and 4 sacks as a sophomore, but last year got banged up. I wouldn't be shocked if he led this team in tackles by year end. But to even make this more like Georgia 2.0, Kentucky also brought in one of their quarterbacks in junior Brock Vandegrift. The prospect from Atlanta was supposed to be the star who'd take over the Bulldogs offense, but Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck wouldn't hand over the reins. Vandegrift, who is a 6'3", 210-pound mobile player, has all of the tools to be great and could be the first 3,000-yard passer for Kentucky since 2010, but he has to prove it first.
Is that name notable?
What?
Do you know the 2010 name? If not, that's fine.
I remember pulling it up on the notes, but I didn't write it down.
Hold on. I'll get it. Mike Hartline.
Yeah, I don't think it was like a big NFL guy or anything.
Mm-mm.
But
I was just wondering if it was somebody big, and then I would have been like, what?
Yeah.
Cool.
I do think this could be the year that the Wildcats rise past the back-to-back 7-win seasons. And I think they do get to a win total higher than that. 8. This is a football school, baby. 8 wins. Let's go.
They're a
And
women's basketball school.
Brent, that is exactly what you said last year. You had Kentucky, you had them going 8-4. So not bad, just one went off.
I believe in them. They're
There you
a
go.
football school.
There you go.
This is unbelievable.
Not good enough for the college playoff, but they'll get there.
Okay.
Don't worry.
They're getting there. Tell me about the Tigers. Where's Coach O? Where's Coach O when you need him?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Ooh, we'll get there. Nice.
The Tigers went 10-3 last year. They lost games against Florida State, Ole Miss, and Alabama. Good teams to lose to. They have back-to-back 9-3 regular seasons for Brian Kelly to start his tenure in Baton Rouge. Most fan bases would be ecstatic for rebuilding seasons of that caliber. But this is the SEC. This is LSU. They want more. In 2024, this team will be different on both sides of the ball. Offensively, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas are gone. That's nearly 3,900 yards from scrimmage. That's including Jaden's rushing yards and then the other two's receiving yards. That's a lot of yards. And 31 scrimmage touchdowns. Obviously, that hurts. They need redshirt junior Garrett Nussmeier to fill in the now Washington Commanders' shoes. Now, he's not nearly as dynamic as Daniels in the run game, and we haven't really seen much out of him yet, but he did ball out in last year's bowl game against Wisconsin, throwing for 395 yards and 3 touchdowns with 1 interception. He will rely on Kyron Lacey to take on some of the workload that Neighbors and Thomas are leaving behind, and he's more than capable of doing so. On the other side, they bring in C.J. Daniels from Liberty, who had over 1,000 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns last year to help out as well. To make the transition a bit easier, the Tigers still have 2 future first-round picks playing at tackle on the offensive line. Will Campbell, the best player on this team, is on the left side of the line, and he's projected to be a top 10 pick. Emory Jones Jr. is on the right. He projects in the later half of the first round. Defensively, they lost a lot of talent to the 2024 draft, but they do retain linebacker Harold Perkins Jr. He led the team last year in tackles for loss with 13 and in sacks with 5. And believe it or not, in the bowl game last year, he scored LSU's first 6 points with a 1-yard rushing touchdown. He can run the ball too. Just because. Why not? They also retain their tackle leader in Major Burns, who also happens to have an all-time great name. The most important game for this team in the regular season is not against Alabama. It's not even an SEC game. The most important game is Week 1 versus number 23 USC. The last time LSU won in Week 1, they went 15-0 and won the national championship. They have lost 4 straight games in Week 1.
What?
Yes. The last time LSU won in Week 1, Coach O was there. Joe Burrow was the starting quarterback. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, yeah, winning this game is huge for establishing this team's new identity. Only after taking care of business against USC can they worry about Ole Miss, Alabama, and Oklahoma. I have this team going 9-3 once again, and frustrations continuing to build in Baton Rouge as they come up short in the SEC title race one more time.
Jeez.
Yeah.
9.
That's a team.
Yeah. And I talked about them last year. I kind of disrespected them a little bit. I had them going 7-6. Talked about Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors. They both balled out, but yeah, the record wasn't too great.
Yeah, and I don't think 9 wins is going to be enough to make it.
I
think
don't
the
think so
magic
either.
number is 10 there, right?
I would
And not
say
even-
For an SEC school,
maybe.
9-3 is a high maybe, depending on who they lost to and what the Big 12 and ACC did.
Mhm.
I think, and we'll probably talk about this at the end of the podcast and pick it. It's probably not wrong to think that the Big 10 would bring 4, the SEC would bring 4, the ACC and the Big 12 would
Split 3.
split 3, yeah, whatever it is, and then their group of 5 team come in as well.
Yeah. I don't know.
Again,
I don't think LSU can lose games if they're not against Ole Miss, Alabama, and Oklahoma.
correct.
And even then, beating one of those would be huge for the resume.
See, we'll talk about it at the end, but we'll talk about it at the end. We'll get there. Let's talk about the Mississippi State Bulldogs. You guys gave me back-to-back Bulldogs? Come on.
This one's the
Let's
better
go.
one.
Yeah, let's go on down to Stark Vegas, right? Well, let me tell you about this team. You may know those that are listening from Norman the name Jeff Lebby, former Oklahoma offensive coordinator going into his first year as a head coach. If your offensive coordinator is leaving to go to a school that you will compete, well, we don't play Mississippi State next year, but when they go to the same conference as you and you're cheering as Oklahoma, that should say something. But, we'll see how it turns out for Lebby in year one. Biggest names that I could find on this roster is DeMonte Russell. He's a defensive end senior. He is one of 2 starters returning from this Bulldogs team. They blew up shop. The Mississippi State Bulldogs have, if not the least, one of the least returning rates of starters in college football. So they blew it up. Something of note, both of those players are on defense. It's DeMonte Russell and defense and special teams, sorry. It's Kyle Ferris, their kicker. So their defensive end and their kicker stuck around. Another name from the transfer portal from UTEP, I'm definitely going to mess this up, is Kelly Akarai. I don't think I said that at all. I believe he had over 1,000 yards last season at UTEP. So he should be able to bring in some experience from a group of 5 school into the Southeastern Conference. He will be wide receiver 1. It's going to be a little rough for the Bulldogs this year. They have their over-under set at 4.5 wins. Their floor being 3, their ceiling being 7. Some things to note in here is they do back-to-back play at Texas, at Georgia, and then go back to Starkville against Texas A&M, and then they end their season with Tennessee, Missouri, and Ole Miss. So right there, I just read 6 losses for you. I have them going 4-8. Again, going 1-7 in the conference. I gave them the win against Florida. Gave them a win. And your fun fact is Mississippi State University in 1895 was known as Mississippi A&M. They began playing football in that year under the nickname Maroons.
They should have kept that name.
Yeah. Too many Bulldogs. How many Maroons are there? None.
Yep, just the color.
So Brent and I discussed them last year. We split them. We talked about Will Rogers and what a name he was. We had them going 6-6, so I think we did pretty well there. Not too bad.
I would say that's pretty good.
Yeah, especially after the 9-4 season that they had the year before. We'll take it.
Wow. Let's go down to Columbia.
Yeah, man. Did the Missouri Tigers outperform in 2023? This was a team that went 6-7 in 2022 and followed that up with an 11-2 record that was worthy enough for a college football playoff run if the expanded format debuted last year instead of this year. Now, I know a lot of people are chalking up 2023 as luck, given they didn't have to play Alabama. But this is still a team that beat good Kansas State and Memphis teams, destroyed Tennessee, and beat Ohio State. And it's not their fault the Buckeyes didn't have a backup plan for the Cotton Bowl. At head coach, Missouri has Elia Drinkwitz, who is entering his 5th season and is 28-21 during his tenure. He will certainly be looking to prove that last season was not a mirage. But maybe even more important is Missouri's star players, and that's headlined by the best wide receiver in the nation and maybe the best player in the whole freaking country, Luther Burden. In his freshman season, he showcased his versatility with receiving, rushing, and special teams touchdowns. And in his sophomore season, he solidified his status as one of the nation's top receivers, racking up 86 catches for 1,212 yards and 9 scores. This is a player that will go in the top 5 of next year's NFL draft. but he's not throwing the ball to himself. And even though quarterback Brady Cook doesn't get the love of all the other superstar quarterbacks in the NCAA, he's pretty damn good. Last season, he threw for over 3,000 yards and 20 scores while adding 8 touchdowns with his legs. And their top transfer even further solidifies the offensive side of the ball with offensive tackle Caden Green from the Oklahoma Sooners. The 6'5", 316-pound plug-and-play left tackle is about as important as a transfer gets, and he should be terrific from the start. Sorry, Joe.
Dude, I remember him transferring, and a lot of things in Norman were said. Very not supportive and will not be repeated. Not by myself, by everybody. If you go on Twitter, you'll see it. But huge loss, especially when we get to OU. We'll talk about their offensive line. But
yeah,
he's going to be an NFL player.
Yeah, for sure. This season, Missouri plays 7 teams that didn't go bowling, and I expect them to win all 7 of those pretty easily. They also somehow avoid Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, Kentucky, and Tennessee.
Wow.
Really, all they have to do in my eyes is win one of 3 against Alabama, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma, and I think they'll be in the top 12. I have them at 10-2 once again this year.
Yeah,
their schedule's so easy, dude.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's wow. And shout out Ahmad again. We're missing the record prediction here on our sheet, but he was one of the people that predicted the surgence of Luther Burden. He wasn't the guy the freshman year, as Brent was saying, and Ahmad had him as his guy to watch. So he did something right there as well. Shout out Ahmad.
NFL Draft Buzz, which is like a website I go on pretty frequently to like look at NFL prospects and stuff. They have Luther Burden as their number 1 ranked player in the entire country.
I saw that.
So I could definitely see him being the top receiver this year, and like I said, I think he'll go in the top 5 of next year's draft for sure.
He's a beast, 100%.
Yeah, he's gonna be disgusting. It's not fair. But yeah. With that being said, that's a great transition to Norman, Oklahoma. Brent had this team last year, and the people down here didn't think too highly of him. So let's see if you can stay off the hit list and come back.
I remember. First of all, I want to say welcome to the SEC.
Thank you.
Oklahoma did not get the storybook ending to their Big 12 tenure that they wanted, but it was still a great season. They went 10-3, and their 2 losses in the regular season to Kansas and Oklahoma State were by a total of 8 points. So brutal losses to take away their SEC title, their Big 12 title hopes. But things are not going to get easier in the SEC. Brent Venables enters his 3rd year as the head coach of the Sooners with a brand new challenge. They will have to deal with the loss of Dylan Gabriel, as we talked about last week. He shipped off to Oregon. They might just be all right, though. Jackson Arnold did okay in the bowl game last year. He had 361 yards, 2 touchdowns, and all 3 of his career interceptions. That's fine. Just clean up the interceptions this year, and he'll be okay. He has plenty of help. His wide receivers should be good between Nick Anderson and Purdue transfer Deion Burks. And the offensive line is brand new. And though he may not see much playing time, they bring in freshman Taylor Tatum, the number 1 running back in this year's class. Thankfully, the defense should be up to the SEC challenge. There are plenty of names to mention here: Gentry Williams, Billy Bowman Jr., Dason McCullough, Kip Lewis, and the Miami of Ohio transfer Caden Woolard. But middle linebacker Danny Stutzman is the centerpiece of this team, and rightfully so. The dude's an absolute beast. Last year, he had 104 tackles and 16 tackles for loss. The team is a good team. They have a lot of talent. They have potential to be great this year. But the schedule is really tough. I would say it's the number 2 hardest schedule in the nation behind Florida. They have to take on 6 of the top 15 teams in the country. Welcome to the SEC. Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, LSU. Goodness gracious, that hurts. Despite the odds, I still think this team can do enough to win 9 games, going 9-3, and putting up a hell of an effort in year 1.
I agree fully with you.
And let's see what Brent said last year about them. Actually, that's on the Big 12. Let's pull it up here real quick. Brent said, oh, maybe not. It says I had them going 7-5. Maybe I got them mixed up.
That's okay.
But we said week 6 versus Texas was a big game, and it was. Big win there.
Big win there. Yeah, the losses to Kansas and Oklahoma State definitely hurt, especially when you're in Stillwater.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get
total of 8 points. That hurts.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but no, Braden, I really liked your top recruit, top person coming into Norman, especially that wide receiver room is deep with Nick Anderson, with Andrell Anthony, and a ton of other depth as well. But with Jalen Gibson going down for the season, definitely is going to help for him to step in and get some reps. But no, this every single thing I've heard about this Oklahoma Sooners team on social media is 6-6 or 10-2. So I think you hit it right on the head with a 9-3 or 8-4. Obviously, I'm going to come out and say we're obviously winning the whole natty, but it's going to be really cool for Alabama to come in here, for Tennessee to come in here, for us to travel to Oxford, Missouri, Auburn, I'm forgetting the LS, going to Death Valley in the last week of the season. So I think that'll be super cool. It's a fun time for people in the SEC that have never been to Norman before. So I would like to openly welcome you all to Norman. Go to O'Connell's before the game, and the Riverwind Casino is right nearby. So fun times for all.
Absolutely. And before you transition over, Oklahoma had some big news today. Earlier today for next year. They landed a 5-star number 5 at his position offensive tackle in Michael Fasusi. He decommitted from another school in the South area that may also have just joined the SEC. So good land.
Definitely stolen from the Longhorns. Their Twitter fans were not happy, saying that he picked day one starting over development. But I would love to compare the offensive linemen of the NFL from OU to the ones from Texas, because the names Creed Humphrey comes off the top of the mind, possibly the best center in the NFL. Tyrone Smith, also OU. The list can go on and on and on.
Trent Williams, Lane Johnson.
Yep, thanks. Keep going. I wasn't gonna gloat too much, but sure, guys, your backup quarterback decided that he wanted to be in the game to make more money. But no, we're not drawing attention to the program. Let's go to Ole Miss.
That's me. I'll tell you what, Ole Miss, they're not just a pushover in the SEC anymore. Yes, they might not be on the same level as a Georgia, but this is a team that beat a Jaden Daniels-led LSU and rolled past Penn State in the Peach Bowl last year, and there's reason to believe they could be even better in 2024. A huge reason why Ole Miss has been so successful of late is none other than Lane Kiffin, who might just be the most talented coach in all of football. He's entering his 5th season with the Rebels and is 34-15 during that span, and he seems to get the most out of his players. The most efficient side of the ball probably comes on the offensive side of the ball, where they are headlined by senior quarterback Jackson Dart, who had 3,400 yards and 23 touchdowns while adding 8 rushing scores last year. It is certainly his show, and he has 2 NFL-caliber receivers on the outside with the return of Trey Harris and South Carolina transfer Antoine Wells. Both of those guys profile as second-round receivers in next year's NFL draft. But just because the pass attack was so good last year and will continue to be good, we can't gloss over the rushing attack. Ole Miss rushed for 150 yards or more 7 times last year. and 200 or more in 4 of their games. It's one of the most demoralizing things when your opponent can't stop the run. But their best player might not even be Jackson Dart or their star wide receivers. I think it might be Walter Nolan, a defensive tackle transfer from Texas A&M. As an almost sure future first-round pick, he has the special blend of size, quickness, and power you want leading your D-line. I have the Rebels at 10-2 with a spot in the college football playoff. And one more thing before we end the whole Ole Miss discussion. Did you guys see the lawsuit against Lane Kiffin?
I did not.
So, it's been going around on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. But apparently a woman is suing Lane Kiffin, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance in a joint lawsuit for $1 gazillion, which I didn't even realize was a real number until I saw the news story. But I still don't think it's a real number, so I have no idea what to think. But much of the woman's narrative in the lawsuit is not legible. But it's something about how her pay from her employer was going to the Trumps and Lane Kiffin. I don't know what to think, but let me just say I don't think it's a coincidence that this woman is from Birmingham, Alabama. So, it's weird.
What are we doing?
The whole lawsuit is on X. Like, you can look it up. And you could try reading it, but it's just a bunch of chicken scratch. Like I don't even know what to think of it, but it's crazy.
Fair enough. Let's go to the Gamecocks. South Carolina 5-7, 3-5 in conference play. You may know the name Shane Beamer. We'll get into that last name in just a second. 4th season here with the Gamecocks, going 20-16. Some may say that seat is getting maybe a little warm. The Gamecocks did not get any help from Spencer Rattler at all. I mean, can't really blame him. But running back Raheem Sanders is going into his senior year. He's expected to play a big part for the Gamecocks offense with their new quarterback, Lamoris Sellers, coming in. As well as a 5-star freshman edge who's expected to possibly be a day 1 starter, and Dylan Stewart. So keep an eye out for him. He's one of the top physical condition players that came out of this year's high school class. Their over-under set at 5.5 wins here. 4 wins is my floor for them. 7 for the ceiling, just to quickly make a bowl game there. They do have to play Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M in a span of 4 weeks. That's a little brutal, if you'd ask me, especially traveling to Tuscaloosa and then the next week going to Norman. Definitely not kind at all. But I have them going 4-8, taking a step down, going 1-7 in the conference, beating Vanderbilt, and because on July 27th of 2024, the University of South Carolina trademarked Beamer Ball. That is
disgraceful, unbelievable,
distasteful, disgusting, not true. If anyone watched Beamer Ball, it was Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech. I don't care if you're related. I don't care if you share the same last name. I don't care if you're in a better conference. That is a disgrace to college football. I'm more mad about it than Enter Sandman not being in the college football game. It was trademarked for clothing, namely, and T-shirts. If I see it anywhere, I'm setting it on fire.
I just don't understand how we didn't already have that trademarked. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
It is our fault at the end of the day, but
yeah,
the law is not fair.
Hey, maybe we can just cook up a lawsuit. Maybe add Trump and J.D. Vance to the lawsuit as well.
Yeah, that's probably not going to go very well. Let's go over to Rocky Top.
Tennessee had a pretty solid 8-4 season last year. Their loss against Florida derailed a great first half of the season. The loss against Alabama wasn't terrible, but they did get worked by Missouri and Georgia. Josh Heupel is going to his fourth season coaching the Vols with high expectations with a somewhat weak SEC schedule. But I'm not sure if this team is as good as it has been in the past. All eyes are going to be on the redshirt freshman, Nico Iamaleava. The guy's a beast. He was the number 2 quarterback in the 2023 class behind just Arch Manning, and he poses a dual threat option for the Vols. Last year in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa, he made his first start. He went 12 for 19 with 151 passing yards and 1 touchdown, but the real story was on the ground as he ran in 3 touchdowns as well. He'll be passing the ball to Squirrel White and Brew McCoy with a top 10 offensive line to protect him. On defense, they have an absolute stud in James Pierce Jr. The man could easily be a top 10 pick in next year's NFL draft. In 2023, he ranked up 14.5 tackles for loss with 10 sacks and 1 52-yard pick six in the bowl game. Tennessee's schedule is pretty light for SEC standards, featuring Chattanooga, Kent State, and UTEP in their out-of-conference. They get the pleasure of taking on Vandy, Arkansas, and Florida, too. They do have some tough games, though, namely number 24 NC State, number 16 Oklahoma, and both Alabama and Georgia this year. If their shiny new quarterback can live up to the task, I think this team can win up to 11 games. I think he will have some growing pains, though, and Tennessee will drop 4, losing to NC State and losing 3 more in the conference, locking in a back-to-back 8-4 seasons.
Didn't Nico? He played in the bowl game last year, didn't he?
Yeah, he ran in 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, he was on fire. He was really good.
Who'd they play last year?
Iowa. So against the Iowa defense is pretty good.
Yeah, that is good.
Well, let's keep it rocking and rolling. We'll head down to College Station for Texas A&M for the Aggies, not Johnny Manziel this year. You guys might know the name Mike Elko. A little surprising, the Duke head coach leaving after having some success in Durham with Riley Leonard, but he'll take his talents to the SEC in his first season with his quarterback, Connor Weigman. He's a sophomore quarterback who spent most of the last season on the IR, I believe with a ACL or MCL injury. So he'll finally get his first chance to be a full-year starter for the Aggies. They did bring in an edge from Purdue, Nick Skirton. He had 10 sacks last year in that awful Purdue defense. So honestly, something impressive to look through there. The Aggies this is weird. Set at 8.5 here for their over-under being ranked, especially in the Southeast Conference. But honestly, after I looked at their schedule, I'm actually going to go into all 12 games with you guys real quick. And I'll tell you why that 8.5 is not unreasonable. Notre Dame, big game 1, College game day is going to be there. All right. That could be a coin toss game. I think Notre Dame beats you. There's one. McNeese, come on. Florida, Bowling Green. So there you go. You're 3-1. Arkansas in Arlington. I think they win that. That's 4-1. Missouri drop there. Mississippi State 5-2. LSU lose there for 3. If you can get there, you have South Carolina, New Mexico State dub for both of those. Auburn and Texas. I did have them losing at Auburn to Texas, not Auburn, to go 8-4 with a 5-3 record. But the only thing that's staring me in the face here of automatic losses is Texas. We don't know where LSU is going to be in week 9. A huge win at home against Notre Dame in week 1 would be massive. Florida's not great. Missouri, again, in my opinion, an overrated program at this time. Yes, they won 11-2. Yes, they have a very easy schedule. But Missouri's going to be coming in not playing a lot of great opponents. Neither will Texas A&M at the same point. But you also have home field advantage. And it's home of the 12th man. So stuff to keep an eye out for Kyle Field. The Aggies could be sneaky. I have them going 8-4, but if they can make their way, I have at 6-10. If they can walk in to College Station for the Lone Star Showdown against Texas with 9 wins, 8 wins, they could make a statement. So, with that being said, Texas leads this Lone Star Showdown 76-37-5. So this is little brother to those in Austin. This game has not been played since 2011. So people are hype about the Lone Star Showdown coming back, where Texas won by 2 points. Little fun tradition for you, and we'll kick it over to the Longhorns. After the Aggies win a game, their freshmen celebrate by dunking the senior yell leaders in the fish pond at Kyle Field. And this tradition started in 1940.
Nice.
Kind of cool.
I want to get dunked.
You can go to Duck Pond after we beat Clemson. I'll dunk you.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Swim with the duckies. It'll be cold.
Oh,
Let's go to that team down south.
yeah. Huge part of Texas's success of late credited to Steve Sarkisian, who seemed to crank up the talent level extremely fast. The NFL talent and speed are all over the place, including 2 number 1 overall quarterback recruits. Like, this team was 5-7 2 seasons ago. So the fact that we're where we are now, SEC level play, it's kind of crazy to think about. But it wouldn't be a proper preview without talking about those aforementioned quarterbacks, and it's Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Arch will be great, but we most likely won't see a huge sample size of that until 2025. Gosh, I can't wait for the Giants to draft him. Let me just say it. I'm excited. The next Manning. Until then, we have Quinn Ewers, who had 3,100 yards and 21 touchdowns, while adding an additional 5 touchdowns with his legs. He will be looking to stabilize a receiving core that has had a lot of turnover. The unit of old is being replaced by Isaiah Bond from Alabama, Silas Bolden from Oregon State, and Matthew Golden from Houston. I will say, though, that it certainly helps that this offense has an NFL left tackle in Kelvin Banks, who is just hanging around in college for 1 more year before he gets drafted in the top 10 of next year's NFL draft. The biggest question on this team is probably on the other side of the ball at the defensive tackle positions. You obviously don't get better after losing Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, but there's a nice mix of underclassmen to work behind Teoli Savea, who is transferring over from Arizona. On the back end, they have Jahdae Barron at safety, who has 11 pass deflections and over 130 tackles in 3 years as the starter. He'll be stabilizing a secondary that doesn't have a lot of other names in that unit besides him. The thing I'm mostly looking for in this new SEC is which team blunders first. We have a lot of teams in here with 9, 10, 11 wins, and not all of these teams can make it. Honestly, 9 won't even be close to sniffing that top 12 in the SEC, in my opinion. So which team screws up? Well, unfortunately for Joe, I don't think Texas will be one of the teams that whiff. They only face 4 ranked opponents, and one of those is Texas A&M, who is currently ranked at number 20, and another is Michigan, which we all pretty much know isn't even close to the Michigan team we saw last year. I have Texas at 10-2.
I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
Yeah.
And that's the only comment I'll make at this time.
Brent, you mentioned the Giants potentially drafting Mr. Archie there. You're sticking with Daniel Jones for 2 more years?
We can't get out of it, Braden. It's a yearly tradition. We just have to bring him back for 1 more year because maybe this is the year that'll prove it.
I saw some Giants fans on Twitter begging for Ryan Tannehill, so that if that tells you where things are.
I'm not one of those. I don't think Tannehill will win us any more games than Daniel Jones.
I would agree.
But like if they were to trade for like a Hendon Hooker, who isn't doing anything right now, just sitting on the bench collecting dust, I would not be mad.
Yeah.
Like I think that would be a really cool upside option for the Giants, but
Young guy with something to prove, never got a shot. I like it.
You can have
obviously
the,
a Virginia Tech guy, so it adds a little bit more interest for me there. But
you can have the Red Rocket if we can have Brian Burns back.
that's a fair trade.
I agree. That's the show, right, Braden? We don't have any more SEC teams.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Here we go. We saved the best for last.
Let's make this brief.
We saved the best for last. The basement of the SEC, the Vanderbilt Commodores. This team went 2-10 last year and did not win a single game during the SEC slate, and this is nothing new. So
they beat Alabama. They beat Alabama. A&M.
Clark Leah enters his fourth season boasting a strong 9-27 record with almost nothing to look forward other than the knowledge that this team can never underperform expectations. It's not possible. So Joe, tell me about some of the guys on the squad.
I can tell you about two guys, and that's it. Cedric Alexander. He's got a cool name, and he's a returning starter. He's a sophomore running back. He'll be, when they put him in the star portion, and he ran for less than 400 yards because Vanderbilt had 3 quarterbacks last year, and none of them are coming back. New Mexico State quarterback, though, Diego Pavia, is a senior who took his talents to the Power 5, so we'll see what he can do. This team's over-under set at 2.5. It might be the lowest in the NCAA. I'm not kidding. I think Kennesaw State's is higher. I think they're at 3. Their floor is 2. Their ceiling is 4. Braden, I have them going at 3-9, boldly beating Alcorn State, Georgia State, and the Ball State Cardinals. Now we're saying all this, and if Virginia Tech loses in week 1, I am done.
I could honestly see. You said Georgia State. I could see them beating them. So, but yeah, we're gonna look like a bunch of donkeys if we go in there and lose week 1. So
I'm way more stressed about week 1 than I should be. Like it's not even funny.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting there. Well, guys, typically this is where we would end the podcast, but we have a treat for you. I did all the data analytics. I do it all. Don't worry, guys. I'll make sure we're set up here. But to all those that are watching tonight, I introduce to you the Sports Outlet Show College Football Playoff.
This is a surprise.
Oh, I know it is. Here, let's get this out of the way soon.
Yeah.
You guys can see everything. Oh, we need to go back one more. Hold on. Bink. All right, you can see them all.
Okay.
You'll notice that one ACC team made it. So here's how it works. So the top team that wins each conference championship will end up being the top 1 through 4. So conference championships have never met more. It's like a March Madness automatic qualifier for the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12. Now, when this was created, the Pac-12 was an automatic 5th bid. It has been determined that they no longer get an official bid in the top 5. 99% of the time, the group of 5 team, there has to be one group of 5 team represented, is going to be the 12 seed. So, based off of our analysis, our predictions, our tiebreakers, I went in depth here. This is our college football playoff. And we got 3 people here, so we're going to pick it. Your first game will be Ohio State versus Boise State, and I want scores. All right? Columbus, Ohio. What do we got?
Boise State 50, Ohio State 5.
It's not at the Blue Field. We're not playing in Idaho.
Oh, that changes it. Opposite then, Ohio State.
I got Ohio State 49-12.
I have Ohio State 52-10. Let's kick it on up here to Notre Dame, Oregon State. Braden.
Notre Dame 34, Oregon State 21.
Brent.
Notre Dame 21, Oregon State 17.
It was going to be a 3-0 sweep, guys, I promise. Let's kick it over to Alabama, Penn State in Tuscaloosa. I'll go first. I have Alabama winning 34-21.
I'll take Alabama 30-27.
It doesn't
Is it
matter. I feel like that could be a close game. Definitely the closest one we've looked at. So
Yeah,
far.
for sure.
Big 12 familiarity here. Texas, Kansas State.
Texas pretty easily for me in this one.
Yeah, I'll take Texas 31-14.
Use the space bar, please. Use this. My space bar is not working, Braden. All right, you're just going to have to deal with it. We'll kick it back over here. UNC, Ohio State. I have Ohio State 38-17.
That's my exact score.
Yeah.
Kick it back up on here. Georgia, Notre Dame.
Say
Or Braden, whichever.
Georgia. Yeah.
I would agree. Kick it down on up to here. Oregon, Alabama.
That's tough.
I've got the Ducks 34-31.
I like it. I'll go with Oregon too.
Yeah. I was waiting to see if you were going to pick Alabama.
Down here, Utah, Texas, another Big 12 matchup. Back
Texas.
to back. Makes sense. Georgia, Ohio State, a familiar game here.
Mm-hmm.
In my eyes, that should be the championship, but
Yep.
it's not. I got to go with Georgia. I think they're the best team.
Braden, before you pick, I'm going with the Buckeyes in overtime.
No. It's got to be Georgia, but that's going to be such a good game.
The Ducks and the Longhorns.
I'll go Texas.
Gosh, that might be even tougher than the Oregon-Alabama matchup.
I will make it harder on you. I think that Dylan Gabriel repeats history and beats the Longhorns. I think this Oregon team has enough.
Dylan Gabriel revenge for sure. I'm gonna go with Oregon as well. I think there's a few holes in the Texas team.
So I think we're all agreeing that this Oregon could be flip-flopped with Ohio State,
Yes.
Yeah.
but Georgia will be there. I could not agree anymore.
Yeah. And I think Georgia beats Oregon in my eyes easier than they would Ohio State. So
I would also
I would
agree.
agree.
Wow. Way to do the people's pick. Take a screenshot, but you never know what can happen in a season. Got to win 3 times to win the Natty this year.
Mhm.
Extra game or 4 for some teams.
Yeah.
That's an absolute gauntlet. Well, for all those that care, Florida State, Georgia Tech, noon, Saturday, August 24th. College football
Let's
season
go.
kicks off.
Let's
And you'll
go.
end your night 11:59 p.m. Hawaii, Delaware State, if they make it on time. Well, that's all we got here, y'all. You got anything you want to say for the end of Volume 3 of the College Summer Super Series? What makes us so special at the Sports Outlet Show?
We're so back. That's all I got to say.
We're so back.
We're back, baby. And we got to do a little NFL preview before that starts up.
Yeah.
So sneak peek, we're pretty good at Wednesdays. Not going to officially put it out there yet, but we have 2 weeks till the football season for NFL where we could do an NFL preview and a fantasy football preview. So stay tuned. Stay on Twitter. Most of you have my cell phone number. So let me know. Go ahead and ask. We might have a mod back on. Who knows? But thank you guys so much for our third straight year of this awesome series. I know we only did the Power 5 this year, but you know what? We'll bring the MAC back next year just for you, Brent.
Heck yeah, man. Got to talk about the MAC. It's the best conference.
134 teams to talk about, baby. We will see you guys next time here on the Sports Outlet Show. Thanks so much for tuning in with us, and we will see you next time. We'll be talking NFL. Good night, everybody.